Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Suplex Biddies. This is a special episode from you boys. We're sponsored by Couch Guy Sports. Make sure you're using the internet one time. Go check everything out from our blogs, our podcast, our store. We have so much fun content coming from you from Couch Guy Sports. With us, as always, Diego Galvis, Andrew Hunneman. And we do indeed have a very special guest. We teased this on Twitter a little bit earlier today. I'm going to let Hunneman introduce our very special guest here. So, Hunneman, why don't you do us the honors?
Yeah, so speaking of special guests, it's one of the most versatile broadcasters and content creators in the game. He's worked everywhere on the Eastern Seaboard, from Bangor, Maine to Orlando, Florida, an Emmy Award-winning producer and current host on the fast-rising ad-free shows network. With us tonight, the one, the only, Jon Alba.
Some good stuff you did practice that in front of him here. How about that? No, I appreciate it, guys. It's been kind of a whirlwind past few months, and it's always fun getting to chat with different people across the sports spectrum and the pro wrestling spectrum. And you're right, man. Bangor, Maine to Orlando, Florida, and everywhere in between. It's been wild.
Well, we definitely appreciate you coming on and taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with us. But before we get into more about Jon Alba, have you ever felt unable to focus, tired, and just low on energy? Well, we understand that feeling so well that the Suplex Biddies podcast is brought to you by Couch Guy Sports Network and sponsored by our friends over at Shocked Energy. Shocked Energy is a drink made by gamers for gamers. All their flavors come packed with 180 milligrams of caffeine to ensure that no matter what you're doing, your focus will always be razor sharp to keep you performing at the top of your game. Their formulas are designed to specifically give you a high energy boost when you need the most, while ensuring to avoid the jitters after too much caffeine consumption. Do yourself a favor. Head over to www.shockedenergy.com and use the promo code CGSN today for 10% off your order, as they have a green apple flavored box and a watermelon flavored box. Oh, and guess what? They ship worldwide. That's right, worldwide. Get your Shocked Energy today and let us help you gain your focus and energy back. Now,
at the beginning of that ad read, you said, "Are you tired? You're not getting sleep, all that stuff." I thought that was directly speaking to me because I was about to be like, "Yes, actually, all the time." That's right. So I got to get on the Shocked Energy flow, I guess.
CGSN, 10% off your order. We'll take it. So again, very special guest Jon Alba with us tonight. Jon, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Oh man, what do you want to know? There's a lot to go into.
What are we working on? What we've done in the business? Just stuff like that.
Sure, man.
Limitless wrestling, everything.
Yeah, man. There's a lot of meat on that bone. So yeah, I mean, I have been a sportscaster pretty much most of the last decade. I've been all up and down the Eastern Seaboard and have worked in local news, ESPN, Fox College Sports. And then I've been working in the independent wrestling scene the last 7 years and been covering wrestling as a whole for about the last 10 years. I recently started back in the beginning of October with Conrad Thompson's team. And in the past month, I've launched the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy podcast and have a few more exciting projects along the way. Alongside him, going to be continuing to do independent wrestling work this year as well, broadcasting, managing. The manager, Jon Alba, the Emmy award-winning Jon Alba, is a very different Jon Alba than the one you're talking to right now. So let's hope that none of you say anything that will bring the Emmy award-winning Jon Alba out, because that's a totally different interview at that point.
Sounds good.
Well, of course. All right. Why don't we just get started with the show? We got lots to talk about tonight. We'll start with Diego. Diego, why don't you kick us off tonight?
Sure. Thank you. So, with the Royal Rumble and everything else coming across and whatnot, one of the longest reigns in terms of championship reigns right now in WWE is Roman Reigns' current title run with the company, with the Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, and a bunch of all these massive pay-per-views that are coming across for WWE. At what point do you see his reign stopping, and who do you see potentially taking over for Roman Reigns in terms of championship run?
My gut tells me that it's ending at the Royal Rumble, and I think Seth Rollins will beat him for the championship. It seems like, based off reports, I believe it was first Dave Meltzer that reported this, that Seth Rollins was set to beat Big E for the WWE championship, and then that Brock was still going to win the Universal Championship, and they kind of changed things on the fly there. I imagine that Paul Heyman was probably going to cost Roman Reigns. So I envision in some way something similar happens at the Royal Rumble. Roman would then lose the Universal Championship at that juncture, setting up the story with he and Brock for WrestleMania. That's kind of how I see it playing out. I think they've had to pivot, and that's, to me, that's where it feels like that pivot's heading.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, and you used the word that I was trying to find as well, the pivot word, because it seems like lately for WWE, it's been a lot of pivoting. You know, you've seen a lot of releases, a lot of staff changes, a lot of promo changes as well, a lot of gimmick changes. So that all makes perfect sense. Now I'll turn it over back to Chris for the next question.
Yeah, I mean, I think more so to go back on that. I mean, we've discussed in the past on when it comes to Roman's title reign on Heyman being the one that screws him over, circa-esque Brock Lesnar back in the day when he screwed him over with the Big Show.
Big Show, yeah, 2002.
That was something we talked about previously, but it's always good to have someone like you just bring it up again and just make it seem like we actually know what we're talking about sometimes. Some of this stuff.
I think you give yourself a little more credit on that front.
I'm gonna have to, I think. All right, so like Diego said, the Royal Rumble is coming up. We have two incredible title matches. Rollins and Roman Reigns, a title match that no one thought we'd see, and Bobby Lashley and Brock Lesnar. Another one that we've been waiting to see for quite some time. I just had a brief mind fart there. I need some shock energy in my life. But we'll stay away from those title matches. Let's move on to the Rumble. So, John, why don't you tell me who you think is going to win the Women's Royal Rumble right now?
This one's kind of hard because I think one of the women's matches at WrestleMania is Becky Lynch versus Bianca Belair. I don't know if Bianca Belair wins the Rumble 2 years in a row. It's possible that she certainly could. If she's ready, I think Bayley should win the Royal Rumble on the women's side. I don't know if she's going to be ready or not. I would love to. I think that'd be a perfect way to heat her right back up into a main event position. I think she could be a big time babyface with this evolved character. Even though I do enjoy her heel work, she's someone that is really likable, all things considered. And coming off an injury back in the Royal Rumble, it seems like that would be a great spot for her. If she's not healthy and she's not back, I anticipate it will probably be Bianca Belair in that sense for them to run that match back at WrestleMania again.
Hunter, do you have a comment?
I was just thinking that it would be very cool to see Becky Lynch kind of get her comeuppance come WrestleMania before what happened at SummerSlam.
And I've had a lot of thoughts on that on social media where I think they just absolutely crushed Bianca Belair with how that was all pulled off, and I'm sure she'll get the win back. I get that. I understand that. But I think the execution was really poor. And it kind of went against everything that Bianca Belair was about as a character. She's the EST. So she's the best. So losing in 25 seconds is not something that the best does. And it takes away a lot of cooling, or it cools off someone rather. And especially when no one wants to boo Becky Lynch in the first place. So it was a weird dynamic that they tried out. I don't think it was successful, but I do think she'll probably get that win back at WrestleMania.
Right on.
So usually with the Rumble, there's always like the Iron Man or the Iron Woman of the Rumble, or even like a dark horse that people are very much buying into. Who would be your dark horse for the women's side?
Man, dark horse. I'd love to see Asuka come back and just kick some ass in it if she's healthy too. I think she's someone that could very much be an Iron Woman in that match, whether she comes back in the first two or close to the beginning of the Rumble and kick some ass like we know she can. I think she'd be a great option for that.
Okay. And then one more thing on the women's side before we move over to the men's. We've seen a little bit of the forbidden door from WWE kind of open up with Mickie James, the current Knockouts women's championship being announced for it. Do you think this is a move that we could see moving forward from WWE? Do you think they finally will bring these outside companies into to work with, or do you think it's just going to be a one-off thing because the women's roster is so slim at the moment?
Yeah, kind of It's ironic, huh? That's someone that they cut. They have to come back and call back and see if they can swing her. I hope it's the beginning of more collaboration between WWE and other promotions. I don't think WWE loses anything by bringing in people from other promotions and giving them the spotlight. It gives them more depth. It creates more fresh matches. It gives the other companies a nice little rub. It's not like Impact's going to be competing with WWE anytime soon. So I don't see any way in which that can be viewed in a negative light, quite frankly. I hope WWE is open to doing more stuff like this. Look, we all know still the biggest possible match that you can do is Roman Reigns versus Kenny Omega. So yeah, if that's something that one day we get, that'd be awesome. I don't anticipate that to be the case.
All right, so we'll move over to the men's side of it. What are your thoughts on who's going to win the men's Rumble?
I think Roman Reigns is winning the men's Rumble. I think Roman Reigns will lose the Universal Championship earlier in the night, enter the Royal Rumble and win the Royal Rumble, and that sets up the rematch with Brock Lesnar. Could he do it with the Elimination Chamber if they use that as a qualifier? They certainly could do that. But I think the ultimate story of Roman being a pissed off heel that gets screwed over is him immediately getting it right back. Should that be the route you go? I don't know, maybe. But I can't tell you who Seth Rollins' opponent at WrestleMania would be in that sense. The scene is a little thin on the SmackDown side, assuming he'd stay on SmackDown. If he brings the Universal title over to Raw and they move the WWE title over to SmackDown, well, then I would love if this whole Kevin Owens thing was just a ruse and like Kevin Owens went back to being a babyface, because I think it's about time that Kevin Owens gets that big moment as a babyface, but I don't anticipate that being the case. So we'll see. But as of right now, I think I'd have to go with Roman Reigns.
Definitely not an avenue that either three of us thought about.
I mean, of course, that's all contingent. That's all contingent on Roman Reigns losing the championship earlier in the night. If that doesn't happen, then who is to say? It would be cool if Big E won so he could get his win back on Brock or something like that, but I don't foresee that being the case.
Okay. Same thing for the men's side, like the women's. Iron Man, dark horse to win the Rumble. That's not Roman Reigns.
Maybe AJ Styles, but I don't say that with a lot. Seth Rollins and AJ Styles would be a great WWE championship match or Universal Championship match at WrestleMania. I think that's something a lot of people would be down with. I'm sure you will see Omos get a real nice outing in this Royal Rumble. You'll hear commentary asked 7 times, how can anyone throw him over? And then somebody will be able to throw him over. And yeah, I imagine that's probably the route they go with that. But I'd say maybe a dark horse would be AJ to go real deep in this. I suspect they'll probably start telling the Randy Orton Riddle story around the time of the Rumble too. So a lot of layers start to unfold at that point.
And then the last question, and then I'll move it over to Hanuman. So with like Mickey James going on the women's side, do we see a surprise Forbidden Door entry from the men's side?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. That there's definitely, I believe it was WrestleVotes that first reported it, that there's some interest on bringing somebody in from the outside again. I think that would be great. I think that's something that these companies should be doing and utilizing each other and recognizing that these aren't the territory days. And I think that would be beneficial for everyone. I could definitely see it happening. Who it would be, I couldn't tell you. Does Moose being in the Royal Rumble really move a lot? I don't know about that. Matt Cardona as someone that they could toss back in there. I don't know. Maybe somehow, some way, some deal is worked out with AEW to bring Chris Jericho back in for a night. Who's to say? We'll find out.
Mm-hmm.
What about that big 7-foot guy they got? What is it, Morrissey now?
Oh, Big Cass, former Big Cass. Yeah,
formerly known as Big Cass.
Who's to say? They certainly could go a route like that. So I guess that's still yet to be seen. The Rumble, I think one of our favorite things about the Rumble is that it's kind of, in elements, it's unpredictable. So I think that's kind of a cool thing about the Royal Rumble. I'm all Team Gangrel. Our first episode of the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy talked all about the new Brood, and Gangrel's my guy. That the Brood entrance is my all-time favorite. So seeing Edge come out again doing it is badass. So I think we should give that guy a little more due here.
Love to hear it. Hanman, move over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I like all the predictions here. Just it all seems good. I mean, as good as WWE and things like AEW have been, the last few years, it's leading up to WrestleMania. This is when it supposedly is usually about to get good. But for all those people that might just be watching the mainstream shows, whether it's on TNT or USA, it's a good time to be a wrestling fan. There's not a lot of, it might not have the same mainstream appeal as it used to, but with all these promotions going on all around the world, someone like Limitless Wrestling, New England based, is there any company you'd have people maybe keep an eye on, or someone that they would like maybe want to check out if they had some spare time to broaden their horizon? Anything you've been keeping an eye on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm selfishly going to promote any of the independents that I work with, but I also say Limitless in particular, since you brought it up, it's kind of your neck of the woods. I think genuinely, wholeheartedly, not just because I'm heavily involved with Limitless, I think it's one of the best independents in the world. And I firmly believe that. I think the quality of the cards speak for themselves, and every single champion the company has had has gone on to be a big star or get signed. The track record speaks for itself. So if you're looking for a great indie, I highly advise you to check out Limitless Wrestling. I've been paying a little more attention, I should say, to New Japan Strong lately. I think there's some good stuff going on there. There's a lot of good talent. I think I'm going to be speaking with Jonah in a couple of days. And yeah, man, I think the beauty of wrestling right now is that there's a lot of good wrestling out there. And so if WWE doesn't do it for you, or if AEW doesn't do it for you, there's a lot of talented promotions that are putting on good quality product with strong rosters.
Oh, yeah. And I know you mentioned the Matt Hardy podcast recently, The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, excuse me. And I know the first episode you guys clocked in about like 2 hours, I think, of talking about No Mercy 1999. You want to give a little sneak peek for those who maybe haven't checked it out yet? What might be to come?
Yeah, sure. Episode 1 dropped this past Friday, wherever you get your podcasts, or on YouTube, Matt Hardy brand. We talked the iconic 1999 No Mercy ladder match that made the Hardy Boys and Edge and Christian. And to my surprise, I had no idea that Jeff Hardy was going to show up. But we're taping the episode, and Matt's like, I got to get the door. And there's Jeff, and he hops on, and we had Jeff Hardy on for the last hour of the episode. It went 2 hours. I was not expecting it to go 2 hours, but because we got in such a groove, it did. I think we're going to try to strive for like an hour and a half or so for each episode. Episode 2 is an hour and a half on the dot. There's a little spoiler for you, dropping this Friday on AEW World Champion Hangman Adam Page. So my idea with this show is to really, you see a lot of nostalgia podcasts out there right now where they're talking strictly about the past. The beauty of Matt Hardy's career is that he's so ingrained in all these different eras of pro wrestling, so we can connect the past to the present. Every single episode will look at how something in the past influenced wrestling as we know it today. And Matt is so transparent with wrestling psychology and laying out stories and character development. So the Hangman episode is really, really awesome. And I'm really excited because it's probably, to my knowledge, I could be wrong, but the first real peek we have at what the AEW creative process looks like. Because we talk about Tony Khan laying out stories and all that stuff. So it's a really interesting look. And then here, I'll give you guys an exclusive, okay? Just on your podcast. An exclusive.
Oh, my goodness.
This has not been announced yet anywhere. Episode 3 is going to be about the first ever tag team tables match, Royal Rumble 2000, with the Hardys and the Dudley Boys.
Oh, my God. What a throwback.
So it's going to be an awesome show in that sense. And we're going to be able to jump through these different eras here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. And I'm so excited for people to check it out if you haven't already.
Matt might be one of the Dudley Boys for that one.
Potentially. I've gotten to know Devon pretty well over the years, and maybe I could reach out and see if he wants to come chat, or maybe talk to Bully Ray, see if he wants to come talk about that. But that's Madison Square Garden 2000. Wrestling is insanely hot at this time, and it's the first ever tag team tables match. So a lot of meat on that bone too.
Right on.
Are there any other questions that any of the three of us have for John here?
I got one. Obviously, WWE had a bunch of their releases this past year. It might clock in around maybe 100 in the last year or so, up that way, whether it's in-ring talent, William Regal types. Of the released people, do you think someone might have been better suited to dethrone a guy like Roman Reigns? Because I have my pick, and I was preaching it for the longest time. It unfortunately didn't happen. It was Keith Lee. What about yourself? Do you?
I was going to cut you off, and I was going to say that you were talking about Keith Lee because that's kind of where I think a lot of people probably sit on that with, right? Keith Lee is someone who I think has legit like Hollywood crossover appeal, and I don't mean that in like just like, oh, he's going to be an action star. I don't really view him in that. I view him as like a serious dramatic actor, someone talking about loss. And I think the way that he emotes, he draws empathy from the audiences watching him. He has incredible presence. I totally think he's somebody that could have been a big time star. It was a miss with him for whatever reason, and it's a shame. I hope he's healthy. I know he had a lot of health issues, so I hope he's healthy, and hopefully we see him in another major promotion at some point soon.
Somewhere where he can just be Keith Lee.
That would be wonderful. It would be wonderful, wouldn't it?
I mean, literally, him, Bray Wyatt. I think the list just goes on and on at that point. Like where are these guys going? Because these guys the majority of them have cleared their 90-day.
Yeah, I mean, we'll do a Bray Wyatt episode on the Extreme Live. We actually have one planned for later this year, which I think will be really interesting insight because that's not someone that people have really talked about on a podcast. And Matt has gotten to know Wyndham Rotunda very well, and they had the tag team and the feud. So I think we'll get some really cool insight on that front too. Shameless plug, but I think that one you can look for probably around April or May. So be on the lookout for that.
No such thing as a shameless plug on this podcast.
No, I stayed up until like 6 a.m. the other night because I couldn't sleep. And I was just planning out the entire year's worth of episodes for the podcast. So I mean, I literally have the entire year planned out. So be on the lookout for that. That's another spoiler. You guys just get that exclusively, man. You guys hit the jackpot here.
3 exclusives right there.
That's right. All the news sites are going to be picking up on it, and all of a sudden they're going to be talking about shocked energy and all that good stuff. So
that's the plan. Diego, you got any questions for John?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the same question would go for the Rumble. I mean, there's been minor leak rumors that potentially somebody like Ronda Rousey could be involved within the Rumble. It's funny as that rumor does sound, because personally, I don't think it could happen. What if she does show up? What do you foresee being developed as a storyline there for WWE?
I don't know. I haven't put any thought into that because I don't anticipate Ronda Rousey to show up. But if she were to show up, she should be someone immediately kind of thrust right back into that main event scene. We didn't get to see her and Charlotte have a lengthy program. We didn't get to see her and Becky have a lengthy program. So there are certainly elements there. They had the triple threat, obviously, but you can always go the two of them plus her and Bianca. There'd be legs there to run with, but I don't know. I mean, she had the kid not that long ago, and it took Becky Lynch, it was about
48 hours, maybe.
Oh no, I'm trying to think it. December to August, right? So it was 9 months more or less for her to, and she's a freak. So
yeah,
postpartum's not easy to get past. Hopefully for Ronda's case, she's doing well. I haven't heard anything, but if she were to show up, I mean, that would be a pretty damn big surprise, I'd say.
Feels like the first year that they haven't actually had her in the rumors or the odds, so it's like it'd be a very WWE thing.
Yeah, and her contract's up, to my knowledge. So if they were to bring her back, who's to say?
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I guess for me, like the follow-up question to that would be, speaking of all these releases and all of that we've spoken about, 90-day clauses and all that stuff, at what point do you think programs like AEW and Impact finally just get to a point where their rosters are so full that there is nobody else to go to? Who would be the next legacy to be that type of legacy to say, all right, we welcome some?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think AEW has pretty much hit that threshold already, and we'll see, because AEW is going to be losing a lot of talent in the next few months here as some of those first contracts start to come up and you'll see people leaving. So, or not being renewed for that matter. So we'll see how many spots open up off of that. You know, Impact has Anthem backing them, and Anthem's got money, but who's to say, and Impact's drawing 85,000 people a week on TV, which isn't a lot. So what is going to be the sustainability there? So right now, my advice to any talent that gets released is make your life about the indies. Go find great indies to get hooked up with. If you are working indies every week, you can make good money these days. You can make a full-time living if you're working multiple indies a week and you're good enough. So if you were signed to WWE or AEW or another major promotion, chances are you're good enough. So at that point, go ahead and put yourself out there and try to reinvent.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
See anything else?
No,
Donovan?
I think I'm good. Yeah. Appreciate
Oh,
all the
honestly,
insight.
you know what? I'm going to ask him while
Sure.
he's here. What are your
Shotgun.
thoughts on the new NXT? What are your thoughts on NXT 2.0?
Yeah, so I've got a show on ad free shows called Up for Debate, which is kind of like pardon the interruption for pro wrestling. And we just did an episode on who we think will be the breakout star for 2022. And both myself and Danny Cage, my co-host, the owner of the world famous Monster Factory, both picked NXT 2.0 talent as the breakout stars of 2022. I picked Carmelo Hayes. He picked Braun Breaker. And I think that while the current NXT doesn't harken anything similar to what we knew as what NXT was in its prime, its heyday, that's not going to say that there won't be talented people who will run through there who can be big time stars. I think both of those guys can be. And I think there are some other people there who I think have the potential to break out and do very well. So I hope that is the case for NXT 2.0. Is it a show that I love to watch? I wouldn't say that it is, but that's not to say that there aren't talented individuals on it. And I do enjoy watching some of those very talented individuals. I love Carmelo Hayes. I got to work with him for a very long time on the indies. And I think that he has potential to be a big time breakout star. If you want a Royal Rumble prediction, I predict that both he and Braun Breaker will be in the Royal Rumble. And my bold prediction that I already put out there into the wrestling universe, so I have to keep with it, is that Carmelo Hayes will have a match on the WrestleMania card. If not, both Carmelo Hayes and Braun Breaker will have a match on the WrestleMania card. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Right on.
Yeah, so I think the last thing for me, just talk about WrestleMania. What do you? So obviously it's a 2-night event again. What do you?
Extravaganza.
Whatever you want to call it. What do you think the main events? What would you want the main events to be for the both of those? For like each night in particular.
It's hard for me because I'm not trying to take like an easy way out here. I don't really watch wrestling in the sense of what do I want anymore. I haven't really watched wrestling that way in a very long time. I feel like I watch wrestling from a very analytical and, nuanced way, if that makes sense. So what would I want versus what do I think it will be? I think Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns main events night 2.
Mhm.
And I think Becky Lynch versus Bianca Belair main events night 1. Truthfully, if that's how I think it's going to play out.
Now, my biggest fear for WrestleMania, with how things have been going up with the cross promoting of the brands and everything, a doomsday scenario, I guess, for me, because I'm a huge fan of the brand split, would be seeing Charlotte win the Rumble and say, hey, I want to verse Becky, and try to get back at her for their loss at Survivor Series, unifying the titles.
I don't see that happening.
I hope not.
I think the match has to be Bianca Belair and Becky Lynch again. They've kept them apart since their feud ended, and they haven't communicated. So I think that's where they're going with that. And I think that match is probably big enough to main event night 1. So I anticipate that's where they're going to go. And then I think Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar will be the headlining match of this WrestleMania card.
All right. Yeah. Good. I hope you're right.
Because we've seen it 5 times. Why not 6, right?
Exactly. Not. Yeah.
It's the truth. That's WWE's motto for you. If it works once, it works all the time.
At least it's a different dynamic this time.
Right.
This is true.
Exactly.
This is true. Any final thoughts from the other Suplex Biddies before we conclude the great episode that Jon Alba has provided for us?
Yeah.
I know. I
Also,
can't believe we got so much exclusive information.
I know.
I can't believe that either. What am I doing here?
It's an exclusive podcast.
I'm gonna get a text from Matt Hardy. He's gonna be like, "What the hell are you doing, bro?" Matt fact, John screwed up big. You know,
it's actually funny because Hunman, you remember this? You and I, we were flying. We went to All Out, All In.
Matt was on the shuttle back to the airport with us.
Mm-hmm.
And we were gonna say hi. I was like, it's 7 a.m. I'm not gonna ruin this.
It's just like a regular guy sitting there, no one saying hi to him and everything like that. It was like, we know who he is.
I'll tell you what, we taped episode 2 in person together because AW was in Jersey this past week, and I went and met him before the show, and we taped episode 2 in the morning, and I drove him to the arena afterwards. And leaving the hotel, man, I'll tell you what, Matt Hardy is still over like Rover. Wherever he goes, there were fans.
For sure.
There were fans everywhere coming up to him, asking for pictures and selfies. So listen, I can't stress it enough. If you haven't checked out The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy yet, not just for self-promotion, this is like the podcast that I would want to listen to if I was a wrestling fan. It is transparent, it's honest, and it's the freaking Hardy Boys, right? Like, these are the coolest tag team ever. And man, Matt's the man. He's a serial reinventor. And when you think about all the different things that he's done in his career, between the Hardy Boys, V1, Broken Matt, Big Money Matt, the Ring of Honor stuff, Surge, there's so much stuff that he brings to the table. And I'm so excited to continue to dive into this with him.
Heck yeah.
So John, we want to thank you again for coming on with us. Why don't you, I mean, we've already plugged the Matt Hardy podcast. What about other projects you're working on, your Twitter handle? Where can people find more Jon Alba stuff?
Yeah, well, you head over to adfreeshows.com. You sign up for that. You'll get a ton of bonus content to the weekly Conrad podcast this coming week. I believe it's this coming week. I think I'm hosting the Kurt Angle show, where we did a watch along of Final Resolution 2007, which is a 30-minute Ironman match with he and Samoa Joe. And I got to break down wrestling psychology with Kurt Angle, which was just the coolest thing in the world. So go check that out when that drops. And on Ad Free Shows, one-on-one with Jon Alba, that's my long form interview show you can check out. Up for Debate, as I was talking about, our debate style show. The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. I got tons of other projects that haven't been announced yet for 2022 that you're going to be hearing about really soon. I've got a feeling that one of them is so off the wall different than anything in pro wrestling podcasting that people are going to be like, So I'm excited for that. You can find me on social media at Jon Alba, JONALBA. Lose the H because H is for losers. I'm the manager of Prestigious on the independent scene. So Limitless Wrestling, Let's Wrestle, and any other of those New England independents that are making noise. Go check that stuff out there. And I really appreciate you guys having me on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely.
And no, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule again
No
to
doubt.
come talk a little graps with us.
No doubt. I appreciate it.
But from all of us here at Suplex Biddies, make sure you're following us on Twitter at Suplex Biddies. And, you know, from Andrew Hunman, Diego Galvez, Chris Jones, we're signing off, and we'll see you next week.
Right on.